What's up, everyone? It's Tim J here to give my predictions for UFC Fight Night. Kelvin Gastelum versus Jared Cannonier. Coming off a little bit of a break, didn't do a video for the last card, but back at it again. And this is actually a really good card to bet on. So, I've done a lot of research, and yeah, I think there's a lot of value plays on this card. So, without further ado, let's get into it. First fight of the card, we have Ramiz Brahimaj versus Sasha Palatnikov. So this is a really close fight. Brahimaj is the $1.80 favorite. I think that line is completely correct. Ramiz, he struggled a bit in his last fight and his UFC debut against Max Griffin or Jordan Griffin. I always get them two mixed up. Um, Struggled in that UFC debut, didn't really use his grappling at all, and basically just got outstruck for 15 minutes. Palatnikov, he had a tough fight against Impa Kasangane. Yeah, got caught in that guillotine choke, and he wasn't actually looking too bad before that happened. So, yeah, I'm not going to bet this fight. I really need to see more tape from both guys, but I think based on what I saw, Ramiz's striking actually looked pretty technical despite him losing his last fight. And I would expect him to at least use some of his wrestling and grappling in this fight as well. So I'm going to take him to win by unanimous decision. But yeah, not going to bet the fight. Next fight of the night, we have Roosevelt Roberts versus Ignacio Bahamundes. This is one of my more confident picks and bets for the card. So I'm betting Roosevelt Roberts. Basically, Bahamundes, he didn't look that great in his last fight against guy from Canada that I always forget the name of. Yeah, didn't look great in his last fight. John Makdessi. Yeah, he didn't look great in his last fight, and he really struggled to like. He's got a long frame. Bahamondes does, and he really struggled to keep the distance and keep the fight as a kind of point fighting distance fight that he wants. Roosevelt Roberts, I think he's going to come in. He's going to make this a really kind of dirty, scrappy type fight. He's got good striking, good grappling as well, despite some of his submission losses. So I think he's going to come in. He's going to outstrike Bahamundes, going to outgrapple him, and I see him likely winning, or either getting the finish or winning a unanimous decision. So I'm betting Roosevelt Roberts, and that's a best bet as well. Next fight of the card, we have William Knight versus Fabio Cherant. William Knight is the heavy favourite, $1.40 favourite. For all my 1 million subscribers out there, please do not bet William Knight in this fight. I think he is the better fighter than Fabio Cherant, but if this fight is basically a 15-minute stand-up affair, then it's really anyone's game. Like, I see the striking of both of these guys as pretty even. Both got power. They don't have a huge diversity of strikes, but, they do the basics well. I think William Knight, I think he's got the better grappling of the two. And I think even though his wrestling isn't that technical, I think he'll be strong enough to effectively get Cherant to the ground and at least get some top control time. And I think that'll be the difference in the fight. But I think it's going to be a close fight. If I was going to bet, I'd actually be more interested in betting on Cherant than William Knight. But yeah, it's a pass from a betting perspective. But I'm going to pick William Knight to win by unanimous decision. Next fight of the card, we have Bea Malecki versus Josiane Nunes. Really tough fight to call. I watched the footage of both of these girls like at least two or three times. It's kind of hard to separate them in terms of their skill sets. B Malecki, I think she's just going to be the much bigger girl in a way. She's going to have a really big reach advantage, much taller. Nunes has got a good pressure style. Like she looks to have really good cardio. Comes forward, basically keeps throwing hooks, and she's been successful in her career in beating low level regional girls. But I don't think she's gonna be able to just tire out Malecki and then get a TKO once Malecki is kind of quits, because that's what Nunes has done with her previous opponents. I don't see that happening. I think both these girls are really tough, so I think the fight will likely go to a decision. And I see Malecki winning a unanimous decision. And I think if Malecki does manage to get the fight to the ground, I think she's got an advantage over Nunes. But yeah. So yeah, my pick is Malecki, and I've got a small bet on Malecki, but yeah, it's a hard fight to call, so it's not a best bet. Next fight of the card, we have Brian Kelleher versus Domingo Pilate. So this fight, Pilates, he's one of those fighters that he's very strong offensively. He's got really quick, powerful punches, but his striking defense is quite bad. He got clipped and nearly knocked out against Vince Morales, and then he did get clipped and knocked out against Journey Newsom. But the thing about it, his striking is pretty decent. I mean, he has a win on his record against Adrian Yanez, who's obviously an up and coming star. So I think this fight, it's likely going to be one where Pilates is going to be winning. If it's just a striking type fight, but Brian Kelleher is really tough. He's got good hooks, good power in his hooks, and he's got a lot of grit. Like he can be getting pieced up on the feet and just kind of fight through it and try and land that bomb. So I'm gonna pick Domingo Pilate. I've got a small bet on him, but it's a very risky bet, and yeah, Brian Kelleher is definitely live for the knockout because Pilate seems to be a bit shinny. But yeah, I'm going to take Pilate to win. Next fight of the card, we have Luis Saldana versus Austin Lingo. I'm going with Austin Lingo in this fight. Luis Saldana, he looked really good on his contender series fight, but then didn't look as good in his last fight. Basically, I think his last fight was against Jordan Griffin. Yeah, basically, I'm not sure if it was just the octagon jitters, but he looked pretty gassed about 6 or 7 minutes into the fight. He did well to kind of fight through it because it was a kind of pretty grappling heavy, grueling type matchup. And that was impressive to see, but effectively came down to one takedown that he got in the last kind of 2 minutes of the fight, which won him the fight. But the real problem I saw in Saldana's game was when he got pressured up against the cage, he didn't seem to do that well. And Austin Lingo, he's got a pressure style and he's got pretty good power when he sits down on his punches. So I haven't seen as much grappling as Austin Lingo as I'd like, but Saldana's not a grappler, so I think if either of the two are going to be shooting for takedowns, it's going to be Austin Lingo. So yeah, I see Austin Lingo having more power. I think he's going to come forward. He's going to control the cage. I think he's going to score more punches, and I think he's going to win the fight, likely by unanimous decision. So I'm going to bet Austin Lingo, and this is another best bet. Next fight of the card, we have Alexandre Pantoja versus Bren Royval. Probably the most exciting fight of the card. Both of these guys, like they're technical. Like they've got good stand up, good ground game, good scrambles, good transitions. And both of them are really highly offensive fighters. Like Royval just comes forward and just keeps like pressuring guys, keeps throwing kicks, keeps throwing knees, keeps throwing jabs, and just looks to capitalize on the chaos in fights basically. And Pantoja, he's got a similar style to that as well. It's pretty hard to separate them. I think when I first saw the footage, I was leading Pantoja, but I think with the odds the way they are, Brandon Royval's a $2.40 underdog, and I think realistically this fight is 50-50. So I'm going to take Royval to win. It's not a best bet. I'm because Pantoja's a really good fighter, and I think both of these guys have the ability to be a champion one day. But um, I think Royval's volume and his length is going to give Pantoja trouble. So I'm going to take him to win, but yeah, wouldn't be surprised if Pantoja took the fight as well. And I'm going to take Royval. Uh, I'm going to take him to win by decision. Even though he has a tendency to finish his fights, I think he's going to win this one by decision. Next fight of the card, we have Vince Pichel versus Austin Hubbard. Yeah, I'm going to take Austin Hubbard here. Vince Pichel's had a really good career in the UFC, had some great wins. Just a really like tough, gritty guy. Striking is kind of pretty rudimentary, but he's really strong and seems to basically win his fights by getting takedowns and getting racking up top control on guys. Austin Hubbard, he trains at altitude, and he's fought wrestlers throughout his UFC career, and he's shown a clear ability to just keep getting back up to his feet, keep pressuring guys, and then even in his last fight, he started to shoot takedowns as well. So, um, Jim Miller was able to take down Vince Pichel. So it seems like Pichel's wrestling, like he's got good offensive wrestling, but his defensive wrestling isn't top tier. So, um, yeah, I think Austin Hubbard, he's a really good pick here. I think his cardio and his kind of output is going to be the distance. So I'm going to bet him to win. Going to take him by unanimous decision as well, and that is another best bet. Next fight of the card, Chase Sherman versus Parker Porter. Taking Chase Sherman here. I think, look, it's still a fairly low level heavyweight fight, but I just think I've seen better striking from Sherman than I have Porter. Porter had a good win against Josh Parisian, where effectively he just showed his grit. Parisian, clipped him a little, rocked him in the first round, and then just went crazy and threw like 100 punches in the space of, a minute and a half, and then kind of was pretty gassed for the rest of the fight. And yeah, Porker just kind of outlanded him for the next 10 minutes of the fight. I don't see that happening against Chase Sherman. Chase Sherman's going to be the bigger guy, got the reach advantage. I think Sherman has fought better competition as well, coming off that pretty close fight with Arlovsky. I think if Sherman can hang in there with Arlovsky for 15 minutes and do pretty well, then I think he's good enough to beat Parker Porter. I'm going to take him to win and by decision as well. Basically, I mean, all these fights are really close, and I don't see many of them getting finished. So, picking a lot of decisions here. In terms of betting, Chase Sherman, he's like $1.50 favorite. Hard to bet when the odds are that short. But if I was going to bet, I'd bet Sherman, even with those odds. Next fight of the card, we have Clay Guida versus Mark Madsen. Pretty torn on this fight. Guida, he's had success in his career where in the fights where he's been able to utilize his wrestling. But the fights that he's struggled with throughout his career is the fights where he's been he's been the inferior wrestler. And he's going to be outmatched against Mark Madsen, but the problem with Mark Madsen is he's got wrestling and that's it. Like his striking is almost, well, from what I saw from his last fight, his striking is almost non-existent, and he's at that stage in his career where I don't think that he can improve it significantly to the point that um, he's going to be able to outstrike Clay Guida on his feet. I mean, Clay Guida, he wasn't like beating up Michael Johnson on the feet, but he was landing some good punches. He's got a kind of pretty quick, fast overhand right, and I think if the fight stays standing for any significant length of time in this fight, I definitely favour Guida. The question is whether Mark Madsen is going to be able to effectively wrestle Guida for about 10 minutes of the fight and win 2 rounds. And yeah, it's hard to know whether he's going to do that. So in terms of my pick, I'm going to pick Mark Madsen. I'm going to take him by decision. Not very confident in the pick, and I'm not betting the fight. But yeah, taking Madsen to win. And then we have the main event of the evening, Jared Cannonier versus Kelvin Gastelum. I've been really bad at picking Kelvin Gastelum's fights. I backed him against Hermanson and he lost. Then I bet against him with against Ian Heinisch and he won. Although I got it right against Robert Whittaker. I didn't think he really had much of a chance against Robert Whittaker, and effectively got outstruck for 5 rounds. But in terms of how this fight's going to go, I mean, Cannonier's got big power, but he is a little bit low volume. Whereas Gastelum, he's got power as well, but he's more of an output volume type guy. And the problem I have with Gastelum is he's got good punches and he's got a really good chin. Like Robert Whittaker absolutely cracked him on the chin so many times in their fight, and Gastelum was barely rocked. So I worry against Cannonier. I think he's someone who's going to be able to take the punches against Whittaker, but I don't think if Cannonier cracks him good, I think he's going to get knocked out. So I think if the fight goes to decision, it's more likely Gastelum's going to win. But over 5 rounds, it's just I can't take him to win. He was hit too many times by Whittaker for my liking. So I'm going to take Cannonier to win, and I'm going to take him by knockout, likely, and I'm going to say 2nd round. And in terms of betting the fight, I'm not going to bet the fight. There we are, everyone. Those are my predictions for Cannonier versus Gastelum. Nice quick breakdown, 18 minutes. Hope everyone's been coping well in terms of the global COVID pandemic. Life's been pretty tough here in Melbourne with the restrictions that we're having to deal with, but I'm sure a lot of other people around the world are dealing with that as well. Please give me a like, please subscribe, and I'll see you for the next video. Peace.